Seventh graders, we're going to start chapter 6. And chapter 6 in math is probably the most important chapter that we're going to study all year long. Okay? Because this is the chapter where you're going to be learning things that you will use in math the rest of your life. Okay? For all of those other lessons where you're thinking, man, when am I ever going to need this? When am I ever going to have to do this? And to be honest with you, much of what you learn in pre-algebra is preparing you for your next class, which is algebra. Okay? Some of it that you're learning you're going to need only to pass algebra, which you have to do to get a high school degree. Okay? So it's important in passing the next class and moving along in your education.
I'm a janitor.
Okay?
Recording janitor.
Kaden. This chapter is stuff that you will use all the time. Okay? You're going to be learning about how to use proportions, and understand percents, and understanding when you're shopping, if something is 25% off, and how to find that, and when you're calculating, if you're eating at a restaurant and you're calculating out the tax and the tip and stuff like that. So this is stuff that you're going to use the rest of your life, okay? The first lesson is about ratios. A ratio is a fraction that compares numbers of different labels, of different things. So many of the fractions that we've talked about up until this point have been an amount out of the total. Like 1/2 refers to 1 out of 2, or 3 out of 6, or whatever. And that refers to things that are the same. So like half of the students, or half of the pizza. But we're all talking about slices of pizza here. In a ratio, these have different labels. So miles over gallons is a ratio that you're going to learn about. When you're finding the miles per gallon, that's a ratio of the number of miles you can go on a certain amount of gas. Okay? So that's a ratio of miles per gallon. Okay? Or, anytime you go shopping, especially at a grocery store, you can look at a price. If it's $2.99 for 15 ounces of chips. The price is $2.99 for 15 ounces of chips. And then there's a small spot on that label that says the price per ounce. So that's the unit rate. It's a ratio of the amount you're paying for every ounce of whatever it is you're buying. Okay? And so we're going to talk about unit rate now. The rate is the amount used to compare the other amount needed. So a rate is like miles per gallon. How many gallons do you need to go 100 miles? Well, that depends on the miles per gallon. Okay? Or how much money do you need to buy a 6-pack of Monster, or whatever it is that you need. Alright? That depends on the price per ounce that you're paying. And so that's called the rate that you're paying. Okay, sometimes it's if you're parking at a parking garage and they'll charge you an amount per hour. That's called the rate. Does that make sense? It's the rate that you're paying. So, to find the unit rate refers to the amount that you're paying or the amount that you're using for every one of the other things. So if you, for example, can go 105 miles on 7 gallons of gas, then your unit rate is taking those two amounts and dividing them. Dividing 105 by 7. 105 divided by 7 is 15 miles per gallon. So that means you can go 15 miles per gallon. That's called the unit rate. The amount per one of the other thing. Does that make sense? So that's what this first lesson is all about. Ratios and unit rates. Now, go to your worksheet. Let's review. There we go. So, how would you find the unit rate in the first section? What did he say you do to find the unit rate? It says in your notes. So yeah, keep your notes open. Whenever you're doing an assignment, you should have your notes open. Devlin?
Divide 91 by 14.
Yeah, you divide. You divide the two amounts to find the unit rate. If you're trying to find the dollars per hour, then you just start with the dollars, $91, and divide by the number of hours. So 91 divided by 14. And then write the unit rate. And whenever you're writing a rate or a unit rate, you always have to label your answer. Okay? You have to tell what the answer means. And so it's really important that you label your answer. What is 91 divided by 14? Aiden? 6.5? So what does that mean? How does that answer our question? 6.5. And then how do we label this?
Dollars per gal.
What we're doing inches and
Number one.
No, it says $91 in 14 hours.
yeah.
So 6.5, we can't write as just 6.5. We have to write it as a
So 61 half.
$6 and
5 cents.
50 cents.
50 cents per hour. Right. $6.50 per hour. That's the rate that you're paying for whatever it is that you're getting, okay? Or maybe that's the amount that you were paid for working.
English you get $6.50.
Yes, 7.25 or 8.25. I think it's 8.25.
You get paid less than minimum wage.
Okay. If you are under 16, yes.
It goes around the neck, as you can see.
All right. Number 2.
Speed stuff.
372 miles in 6 hours. What's the unit rate? So, what do you need to do, Michael? Find the unit rate. You underlined it. Divide the two, right? So divide them. Get your calculator out. There we go. Now we're working.
Yes, it is.
So how do you label that then?
62
Miles. And since it's a rate, we have to have both labels. Miles per hour. Correct. So miles slash hours. That slash means per. Per one of the other. Per means for every one of. Okay? Now, there's another abbreviation for miles per hour that you should be familiar with, and that is MPH. Miles per hour. Okay?
So you could write that also.
So you could write for that for miles per hour. Also, MPG is also a common abbreviation for miles per gallon. Okay. WPM. Does anyone know what WPM stands for?
Words per minute.
Words per minute. Right.
Dang, Otto.
Yep.
I don't know that because you go to like edmodo.com, you're like, look guys, I can tell you 70 words per minute. You just like go like. What do I do?
Let's see. There's another one. KWH.
Katie will.
No.
Yes.
Miss?
Yes.
Miss?
This one has to do with
Start with an
class.
eight.
Listen. No, this one has to do with energy consumption. Give you a hint.
Kilowatts.
Kilowatts
Per hour.
per hour. Right?
Yeah.
Kilowatts per
Team
hour.
effort,
Good.
Kaden.
That.
RPM. Anyone know what RPM stands for?
Rates per hour.
Revolutions per minute.
Revolutions per minute. So in your car, the engine, it's actually the piston that, and the crankshaft that goes like this, and then the pistons go up and down, producing the power.
We're learning about that inside.
Yeah. And so those revolutions refer to the number of cranks and the crankshaft. Okay. Or we're talking about what is the tractor? Oh man, I should know this.
Turbine.
Near trying to
I know. Wait, where's the fish called again? Say the word. Look lost. I want to spread like the type of fish.
Wait, what? It's the.
What?
Oh well. All right, let's move on. Class. Yes, please. Go to the back side.
I know, see.
Alright, I must have forgotten to give you your extra assignment. So there's a lot of extra talking, and so you are completely demotivated to follow along. So your extra assignment will be on page 290, 2 to 32 even. Strike. Alright, now hopefully that will help you be motivated to be quiet and listen for directions. Alright, so we're talking about ratios, and we said that ratios always have different labels. They compare two different things. So in this second section of the practice side, we're talking about ratios of boys to girls in class. In the 7th grade class and in the 8th grade class. Okay? So, you write these fractions or ratios differently. You write them with a colon in between. So how would you write the ratio of 7th grade boys to 8th grade boys from the chart? Jacob?
Boys per grade.
Not boys per grade. You're comparing 7th grade boys to 8th grade boys.
Race. I don't know.
So you would look at these numbers. You look at these numbers, strike 2. We're still, all people think that I can just talk whenever I feel like it, and that's not helping us. Okay? So listen. Go back to your notes. How do you write this as a ratio using a colon?
You write 26 and then a colon and then 30.
Yeah, 26. So there's 26 7th grade and 30 8th grade. Now what we would do is we reduce these numbers as much as possible. So what can you factor out of both 26 and 30? You can factor out 2's, right? So reduce 26 to 13 and 30 to 15. And so this is how you'd write this ratio. 13 to 15. The ratio of 7th grade boys to 8th grade boys is 13 to 15. 13 to 50. How about 7th grade girls to 7th grade boys? So again, look at the chart. How many 7th grade girls are there?
34.
From the chart, 34. And 7th grade boys,
26.
26. So reduce those numbers to
17, 13.
17 to 13. How about number 8 for total boys? You'd have to add the two. So there's a total of 56 boys. And there's a total of 56 girls. So if you could reduce both of those numbers to 1, yeah. So the ratio of boys to girls is a 1-to-1 ratio. Now, how are these used? How are these ratios used? Well, when you are mixing things, oftentimes you're mixing things based on ratios. If you, for example, have a lawnmower at home, you have to mix gas and oil in a 2-cycle engine. It's called 2-cycle engine oil, and you put a little bit in, you mix it into the gas as a lubricant for the engine. And the ratio you have to use is something like
1 to 3?
Yeah, 1 to 3. So if you used 1 cup of oil, or maybe 1 6-ounce bottle of oil, then you'd have to add 18 ounces of gas. So a 1 to 3 mixture, or a 1 to 10 mixture would be 1 of whatever label it is you're using, and then 6 of the other one, or 10 of the other one. That's how you mix according to ratios. Okay? Now, let me ask you this. If you were using cups and mixing in a 1 to 3 ratio, how many total cups would you be adding? If you were mixing it in a 1 to 3 ratio, using cups, how many total cups would you be adding in the mixture? 4. So you do 1 of the one thing and 3 of the other thing, and you'd be mixing a total of 4. Okay? So that's how ratios and rates are different. Notice that if you add the two numbers, you get the total. If we wrote this as 26 to 30, then you would add the two numbers to get the total number of students. Okay? So then, how can you write 3 different ratios for number 10? It says write 3 different ratios. How could you write these ratios differently?
3 to 4, and then you can switch around to 4 to 3.
Yeah, you could write 3 to 4. You could compare the squares to the circles. Then you could write 4 to 3, comparing the circles to the squares. And then you could write you could still write it as a fraction. 3 to the total. So 3 to 7. In other words, squares to the total number of shapes. Squares to shapes is 3 to 7. And you could write 4 to 7 also, but that's how you could write 3 ratios. Okay? Any questions on this? On unit rates, you find unit rates by dividing. To write ratios, you write them with a colon. You reduce the numbers as much as possible. And you can write ratios that mean different things. Okay? Any questions?
So just in case we come up with one of these, another time for number 9, it says girls to all students.
So compare the total number of girls to all of the students.
Oh, so we have.
All add them all together and compare that to the number of girls in simplest form.